Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling, just a giant of a figure, a name that's almost bigger than the sport itself.
It really is. We're talking about Edson Arantes do Nascimento, but of course, the entire world knows him by one name.
Pelé.
Exactly. And this isn't just a look back at a great athlete. When you really dig into the sources, the stats, the biographies, even the political documents, you realize you're tracing the path of a global cultural earthquake.
Right. So our mission for you, the listener, is to go past that simple title, the greatest footballer, and really get into the numbers, the moments, and the surprising off-the-field stuff that made him Ore, the king.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's just start with the foundations, because the raw statistics, they almost sound made up.
They do. They really do. Let's start with the big one, the number everyone sort of knows, the career goal total. He holds the Guinness World Record for the most goals in a career.
And that number is?
It's 1,279 goals in 1,363 games.
What?
Now, you have to be clear. That number includes friendlies and exhibition matches, which is a point of debate for some statisticians, but the sheer volume is it's immense.
And that's just the club side of it, really. Internationally, he stands completely alone.
Completely. He is the only player, man or woman, in the entire history of the sport to win 3 FIFA World Cups.
3. 1958, 1962, and 1970. It's a record that I don't think will ever be broken.
It feels untouchable. And what's fascinating is how his status just transcends football. The International Olympic Committee, the IOC, they named him Athlete of the Century in 1999.
Despite the fact he never even played in the Olympics.
Right. That's how big his impact was.
Yeah.
And Time magazine put him on their list of the 100 most important people of the 20th century. Not athletes, people.
He's up there with world leaders and scientists.
And even FIFA, when they tried to name a player of the century, it got so contentious. The internet vote went to Maradona, but the committee chose Pelé, so they end up sharing the award.
But his influence wasn't just in how he played, it was in how we talk about the game.
Oh, absolutely. He is widely credited with coining the phrase, the beautiful game. He literally gave us the language to describe the art form he was creating on the pitch.
And to really understand that art, you have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
To Três Corações in Brazil.
A very humble beginning. He was born Edson Arantes do Nascimento, named after Thomas Edison, the inventor.
I love that detail.
But here's a little bit of chaos right from the start. His birth certificate had a typo. It listed him as Edison, not Edson. So the king's story begins with a paperwork error.
And with real poverty. That's so central to his story, right? Growing up in Bauru.
Profound poverty. He had to work odd jobs as a kid, serving in tea shops, shining shoes, anything to help the family. And the famous image of him playing, it wasn't with a proper football.
It was a grapefruit or a sock stuffed with newspaper.
Exactly. A sock stuffed with newspaper and tied up with the string. It's this perfect metaphor for genius being born out of, just pure necessity and imagination.
His family called him Dico. So where did the name Pelé come from?
It's another one of these wonderful, almost accidental stories. He was a fan of a local goalkeeper named Pelé.
Pelé.
Right. And as a kid, he kept mispronouncing the name. His friends started teasing him, calling him Pelé to make fun of him. He hated it, threw tantrums, which of course just made the name stick even harder.
And the incredible irony is what the word means.
It's almost too perfect. Years later, he found out that in Hebrew, the word Pelé means miracle. A nickname born from a childhood tantrum that translates to miracle. You couldn't write it.
Before he ever stepped on a professional grass pitch, though, there was futsal, indoor football. The sources really stress how important this was for him.
He credited it himself. He said it was the key to his development. Futsal is played on a hard court, a small space, with a heavier ball that doesn't bounce much.
So you have to be incredibly precise.
And you have to think so much faster. The ball is on you in an instant. Pelé said it taught him how to think on his feet and gave him incredible confidence playing against adults when he was just 14.
He actually said it made him unafraid. He scored something like 14 or 15 goals in an adult tournament and realized, I can do this. I'm not afraid of whatever comes next.
And that is the exact mentality he took with him to Santos.
Which brings us to the Santos dynasty. The leap from poverty to professional superstardom was, what, almost instantaneous.
It was incredibly fast. He was only 15 when his youth coach, a guy named Waldemar de Brito, took him for a trial at Santos FC.
And he didn't just recommend him, he made a prediction.
A huge one. He told the directors at Santos, this boy will be the greatest football player in the world.
Talk about pressure. But he lived up to it.
Immediately. He signs his contract in June 1956. By September, he makes his senior debut and scores in a 7-1 win. By the time he's 16, he's a starter and the top scorer in the entire league for the 1957 season.
The speed of that rise is it's dizzying. And it caused a real panic outside of Brazil.
It caused a full-blown political event, which leads us to one of the most unbelievable parts of the story, the National Treasure Decree.
Okay, let's set the stage for this. Brazil wins the World Cup in '58, then again in '62. Pelé is the face of global football.
So every rich European club comes calling. Real Madrid, Juventus, Manchester United, Inter Milan, you name it. They were all throwing huge amounts of money at Santos to sign him.
And Inter Milan actually got close, didn't they?
They did. They actually had a contract with him. But the second the news broke in Brazil, there was this massive public outcry. The fans were furious. It got so intense that the chairman of Santos had to publicly tear up the contract.
So the people basically refused to let him go.
They saw him as more than a player. He was a national symbol. And the government agreed. In 1961, the president, Jânio Quadros, signed a law declaring Pelé an official national treasure.
A national treasure. What did that mean in practical terms?
It meant he couldn't be transferred out of the country. It was a political act designed specifically to prevent the international market from buying Brazil's greatest cultural asset.
Was there any pushback to that? Or was it just, universally accepted as the right thing to do?
For most Brazilians, it was a source of national pride. The sources don't show any significant public criticism. People saw it as protecting their identity, especially after the trauma of losing the 1950 World Cup at home. It was a statement. This man belongs to Brazil.
And because he stayed, Santos just became this global powerhouse. He led them to, 10 state championships?
10 Campeonato Paulista titles, and he was the top scorer in that league 11 times. But it wasn't just regional. They won 6 national championships, the Campeonato Brasileiro Série A.
They were just dominant.
Utterly.
Yeah.
And a key part of that dominance was the 1958 season where he scored 58 goals in the state league.
58 goals.
As a 17-year-old. And that record still stands today. It's one of those benchmarks that he set at the very beginning of his career that just seems impossible to reach.
The peak of that club's success, though, had to be winning the Copa Libertadores, South America's biggest prize back-to-back.
Yes, in 1962 and 1963. The team was so elegant, they were nicknamed the Ballet Branco, the White Ballet. And that 62 Intercontinental Cup final against Benfica in Europe, that was his coronation.
He scored a hat-trick in Lisbon.
A hat-trick in a 5-2 win that just stunned Europe. The Benfica goalkeeper, Costa Pereira, said something that became legendary. He said, "I arrived hoping to stop a great man, but I went away convinced I had been undone by someone who was not born on the same planet as the rest of us."
Not born on the same planet. That's not just praise. That's mythology.
It is. And beyond just the wins, there are these specific goals that have become part of that mythology.
Right. The 2 goals the sources always point to. The first one is famous precisely because we can't see it.
The one against Clube Atlético Juventus in 1959, there's no video footage of it. But by all accounts, he received the ball, flicked it over one defender, then another, then a third, and then chipped it over the goalkeeper.
So it only exists in memory.
It was considered his greatest ever goal, and he was so frustrated that no one could see it that he later commissioned a computer animation just to try and show people what happened. He had to create the evidence for his own genius.
And the second one, they made sure to commemorate on the spot, the gol de placa.
The goal worthy of a plaque. March 1961 at the legendary Maracanã Stadium.
And this one was just pure power and grace.
He gets the ball inside his own half and just runs. He runs the entire length of the field, weaving past opponent after opponent, and then scores. It was so breathtaking that a plaque was commissioned right there at the stadium to dedicate it as the most beautiful goal in the history of the Maracanã.
A permanent monument to a single moment of brilliance.
Think about all the legends who played there, and they chose that goal.
Of course, the ultimate individual milestone of that era was hitting the 1,000-goal mark. O millesimo.
The entire country was counting down. It was a national obsession. It finally happened on November 19th, 1969. It came from a penalty kick.
The pressure on that kick must have been insane.
The stadium was silent. And when he scored, The pitch was invaded. He was carried on people's shoulders. It was this massive, shared national celebration. The number itself became the achievement.
And to put his club record in perspective, he scored 643 official goals for Santos. That record for most goals at a single club stood for half a century.
Until Lionel Messi finally broke it in 2020, it just shows you the level of sustained excellence over such a long period.
Since he couldn't leave Brazil, Santos basically took him on the road.
They became a global touring act, like a rock band. It was a way to capitalize on his fame. They played exhibition matches everywhere, Europe, the Middle East, North America.
And that touring led to probably the most surreal story about his power, the one about the Nigerian Civil War.
It's an incredible story. The legend goes that in 1969, the two sides fighting the Nigerian Civil War agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire, just so that people could watch Pelé play an exhibition match.
A ceasefire for a football game.
No, in his own autobiography, Pelé said he wasn't sure if an official ceasefire was actually declared, but he confirmed the security was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The fact that the story was even believable, that his presence could be perceived as something that could halt a war, tells you everything about the kind of soft power he had.
He was like a head of state.
He was. And there were lighter moments on these tours, too, like the story about the Egyptian movie star Zubaida Tharwat.
Right, in Kuwait in 1973.
She claimed he just fell for her instantly and kept chasing her day and night. But they couldn't communicate at all because he didn't speak English. It's just this funny little image of his global celebrity colliding with, everyday life.
A global icon who could stop a war but couldn't chat up a movie star because of a language barrier.
It shows the human side of the myth.
But all that fame, all that commercial power, it was all built on the foundation of what he did for Brazil in the World Cup.
The ultimate stage. And his journey there was, it was a roller coaster. It started with a bang.
His very first game for Brazil, he scores against Argentina. He's only 16, still the youngest goal scorer in the country's history.
Then comes the 1958 World Cup in Sweden. He almost doesn't go. He arrives with a knee injury.
But his teammates basically demanded he be included.
They did. And once he got on the pitch in the knockout stages, he just took over. He scores the only goal against Wales in the quarterfinal, becoming the youngest goal scorer in World Cup history.
And then the semifinal against France.
He scores a hat trick. The youngest player ever to do that in a World Cup. He was just unstoppable.
And in the final, against the hosts, Sweden, he becomes a global icon. He scores 2 goals.
Including that legendary one where he flicks the ball over a defender's head and then volleys it into the net. It's one of the most famous goals ever scored.
There's that great quote from the Swedish player Sigvard Parling.
Oh, it's perfect. He said, "When Pelé scored the 5th goal in that final, I have to be honest and say I felt like applauding."
Your opponent wants to clap for you as you're beating them in a World Cup final.
It speaks to a kind of genius that just transcends competition. He finished that tournament as the best young player, and he did it all while wearing the number 10 jersey.
Which he only got because of a clerical error.
Total disorganization. The Brazilian Federation forgot to assign numbers, so FIFA just did it randomly. Pelé, a substitute at the start, got number 10. And a legend was born from chaos.
The 1962 World Cup in Chile should have been his tournament. He was at that point the undisputed best player in the world.
And he started like it. In the first game against Mexico, he assists one and scores a brilliant solo goal. But then in the second match,
Disaster.
he pulls a muscle trying a long-range shot, and he's out for the entire rest of the tournament.
So Brazil won that World Cup, but really without him for the most part.
Mostly without him, yes. It was Garrincha who really stepped up and carried the team. Pelé didn't get a winner's medal at the time because he didn't play in the final. FIFA gave him one retroactively, years later in 2007.
Which brings us to 1966 in England. If 62 was tragic, 66 was just brutal.
It was. The strategy to stop him was just to kick him, repeatedly. He scored in the first game against Bulgaria, making him the first player to score in 3 straight World Cups.
But he paid the price for it.
Heavily. In the final group game against Portugal, he was fouled so viciously he could barely walk, and back then there were no substitutes. So he was forced to just limp around the pitch, a passenger, as Brazil were eliminated.
He was so disgusted by it all, he said he'd never play in a World Cup again.
He did. It was a really low point for him. It showed how the sheer physicality of the game could nullify even his level of genius.
But thank goodness he changed his mind, because 1970 in Mexico is the ultimate redemption.
It's the perfect final act. He initially refused to play, but eventually came back. And that 1970 Brazil squad, my goodness.
It's often called the greatest football team ever assembled.
You had Rivellino, Jairzinho, Gerson, Carlos Alberto, Tostão. and Pelé at the heart of it all. He wasn't the young, explosive forward anymore. He was the playmaker, the brain.
The ultimate number 10.
Their style was it was fluid, it was fast, it was joyful. And Pelé created so many iconic moments in that tournament, even ones where he didn't score.
Like the shot from the halfway line against Czechoslovakia.
Or that incredible save by Gordon Banks for England. Pelé's header looked destined for the net. He used to joke that people remember Banks' save more than any of his goals.
And that dummy against the Uruguayan keeper in the semifinal. The non-touch. Pure genius.
Just letting the ball run past him while he sprinted around the other side of the keeper. It didn't result in a goal, but it showed a level of thinking that was just on another plane.
And then the final against Italy.
He opens the scoring with a towering header. It was Brazil's 100th World Cup goal. The celebration, him leaping into Jairzinho's arms, is one of the most famous photos in sports.
And for the rest of the game, he's the creator. Especially for that final goal.
The Carlos Alberto goal. It's considered the perfect team goal. And it ends with Pelé receiving the ball, pausing for just a split second, and then rolling this perfectly weighted, no-look pass into the path of his captain. It was sublime.
Tarcisio Brunic, the Italian defender who marked him, said it all.
I told myself before the game, he's made of skin and bones just like everyone else, but I was wrong.
He was wrong. Pelé won the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player. His third World Cup. A legacy cemented forever.
He retired from Brazil in 1971, and that amazing stat, with both him and Garrincha on the pitch, Brazil never, ever lost a single match.
Let's pivot from the records to the style to the brand. He coined the beautiful game, and his play was the definition of it.
He was just so complete. He could shoot powerfully with both feet. He was amazing in the air, despite not being tall because his timing was perfect. But his real genius was his vision and intelligence. He saw the game 3 steps ahead of everyone else.
And he had these signature moves that drove defenders crazy.
He did. There was the dribble de vaca, the cow dribble, this little feint to get past a player. But the most famous, and maybe the most controversial, was the paradinha.
The little stop on penalty kicks.
Exactly. He'd run up to take a penalty and then just stop dead in his tracks. The keeper would dive, and Pelé would just roll the ball into the other side of the net.
It seems so simple, but it's pure psychological warfare.
It was so effective that FIFA eventually banned it in the 70s. Think about that. You're so good at one move that the sport's governing body has to literally change the rules to stop you.
But for all that trickery, he was also known for his sportsmanship. The image of him and Bobby Moore swapping shirts after the England game in 1970 is iconic.
It really is. It represents this deep mutual respect between two of the game's greats. There's no gloating, no despair, just admiration.
That image, that brand, made him a commercial juggernaut. Which brings us to the story of the Puma Pact.
This is a business school case study. Before the 1970 World Cup, you had the 2 big German sportswear brands, Adidas and Puma, run by the rival Dassler brothers.
And they were terrified of getting into a bidding war over Pelé.
So they made a secret gentleman's agreement, the Pelé Pact. Neither company would try to sign him.
Puma had other ideas.
Puma broke the pact. They went to Pelé and paid him a huge sum, about $120,000, for one single simple action.
Which was?
Right before the kickoff of the quarterfinal against Peru, he asked the referee to pause for a moment so he could tie his shoes.
In the center circle.
In the center circle, in front of a global television audience of hundreds of millions. The cameras, of course, zoom right in on his hands as he slowly, deliberately ties his brand new Puma King boots.
It's brilliant. It's guerrilla marketing before that was even a term.
It was a masterstroke. It launched the Puma brand globally overnight and basically kickstarted the modern era of multi-million-dollar athlete endorsements. He wasn't just a player, he was a walking billboard.
After all that, after conquering Brazil and the world, he did the one thing no one expected. He went to America.
To the New York Cosmos in 1975, he came out of semi-retirement to play in the North American Soccer League.
Which at the time was a very minor league.
Very. Signing him was a massive gamble to try and make soccer popular in the U.S. They made him the highest paid athlete in the world to do it.
And the impact was immediate.
It was chaos. His first public appearance in Boston, the crowds were so huge he was crushed and had to be carried out on a stretcher. He was a phenomenon on a level America hadn't really seen before from a global star.
And he legitimized the league, for Americans and for other players.
Absolutely. His arrival was a signal for other legends to follow. Franz Beckenbauer came, Johan Cruyff, Eusebio. The NASL suddenly became this glamorous, star-studded league.
He didn't just play in the league. He basically built its reputation. And he went out on top.
He did. He led the Cosmos to the Soccer Bowl title in 1977, his final season.
Yeah.
And his farewell match was just this perfectly staged event.
Cosmos versus his old club, Santos.
In a sold-out giant stadium, Muhammad Ali was there, Robert Redford. It was a huge deal. He played one half for each team.
And he delivered a little speech before the game.
Love is more important than what we can take in life. And then he went out and scored his final goal, a 30-yard free kick for the Cosmos.
And then the perfect ending. It started to rain.
And the next day, a Brazilian newspaper ran the headline, "Even the sky was crying." A fittingly poetic end to an epic career.
So his playing days end, but the legacy, the awards, they just keep coming.
For the rest of his life. And the testimonials from the people who played against him, they're almost more powerful than the trophies.
Let's talk about some of those. Johan Cruyff.
A genius in his own right. Cruyff said, Pelé was the only footballer who surpassed the boundaries of logic.
Bobby Moore, his great English rival.
Moore said, Pelé was the most complete player I've ever seen. He seemed a giant of an athlete on the pitch. And Ferenc Puskás, the Hungarian legend.
What did he say?
Puskás said, I refuse to classify Pelé as a player. He was above that.
That's maybe the ultimate compliment. He's not even in the category of player.
And then there's that joke from the 1970 broadcast. Panelist asks how to spell Pelé, and Paddy Corinne just says, easy, G-O-D.
Pelé himself seemed to struggle with that level of deification.
He did. He once said, Pelé doesn't die. Pelé will never die. But Edson is a normal person who is going to die one day, and the people forget that. He understood he had become two different things, the myth and the man.
Even with all that, he never won the Ballon d'Or, the big individual prize?
Well, he couldn't. Back then, it was only for European players, which is a huge historical asterisk.
But they corrected that, in a way.
They did. France Football, the magazine that gives out the award, did a reevaluation years later. They calculated that if non-Europeans had been eligible from the start, Pelé would have won the Ballon d'Or record 7 times.
7, wow.
It just reinforces his statistical dominance over that era.
Beyond football, he moved into some serious roles. He was knighted by the Queen of England, he was a UN ambassador, and he became a government minister in Brazil.
Yes, from 1995 to 1998, he was Brazil's Minister of Sports, an extraordinary move.
And his big project was trying to clean up the sport.
It was. He proposed what became known as the Pelé Law, which was a major piece of legislation designed to fight corruption and modernize Brazilian football.
What did it actually do?
It tried to force clubs to be more like professional businesses instead of these old, opaque social clubs. And crucially, it gave players more freedom and control over their own contracts, which was a huge shift in power away from the club owners.
I imagine that didn't go over well with the establishment.
Not at all. He faced incredible resistance from the old guard who benefited from the corrupt system. The law's impact was mixed, but it was a brave and significant attempt by a sporting icon to use his political power for reform.
He never really stopped being a global voice, even late in his life. In 2022, he wrote an open letter to Vladimir Putin about the war in Ukraine.
He always saw himself as having a platform and a responsibility. He started the Pelé Foundation in 2018 to help underprivileged children. His legacy was always something he was actively building.
Unfortunately, his final years were marked by a serious battle with his health.
They were. He had had health issues for a while, but in September 2021, he had surgery for a colon tumor.
And that was the beginning of the end.
It was. He started chemotherapy, but by November 2022, he was hospitalized, and the cancer was no longer responding to treatment.
He died on December 29th, 2022, at 82.
And the whole world mourned. The Brazilian government declared 3 days of national mourning. Landmarks everywhere, from the Christ the Redeemer statue to Wembley Stadium, were lit up in the colors of Brazil.
The funeral was a massive public event in Santos.
A 2-day wake at the stadium where he became a legend. Over 230,000 people came to pay their respects. He was buried in a vertical cemetery on the 9th floor in a tomb that overlooks the Santos football pitch.
A final resting place watching over the field where he made his name.
A poetic final touch.
And even after his death, the honors continue. And one of them is maybe the most unique tribute of all.
It has to be the dictionary entry. After a big public campaign in Brazil in April 2023, the Michaelis Portuguese Dictionary officially added Pelé as an adjective.
As an adjective. So what's the definition?
The definition is exceptional, incomparable, unique. His name is now officially a synonym for perfection.
That is just incredible. So when we wrap all this up, when we look at the whole picture, you're left with this dual legacy that is it's unmatched.
On one hand, you have the pure athlete. 3 World Cups, the Guinness World Record for goals, athlete of the century. The numbers are undeniable.
But on the other hand, you have this cultural force, the man who coined the beautiful game, who could allegedly stop a war, who pioneered global sports marketing with a shoelace, and opened up America to soccer.
He was both at the same time, which
Ah.
brings you to that great quote from Henry Kissinger, of all people.
Kissinger knew him well. What did he say?
He said, "Performance at a high level in any sport is to exceed the ordinary human scale." But Pelé's performance transcended that of the ordinary star by as much as the star exceeds ordinary performance.
So he's saying Pelé wasn't just in a different league from normal people. He was in a different league from other superstars.
Exactly. His actions just had a different weight. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to consider.
In our modern world of social media and fragmented fame, can any athlete today truly have that kind of impact? Can anyone become so big that their nickname becomes a literal definition of greatness in the dictionary, a political force, and a cultural icon, all from the simple act of playing a game beautifully? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the legacy of Pelé.